don't want people thinking that I'm the type of woman who's only interested in the size of a man's wallet.
Let's just say it's after dinner, you've got a fork in your hand. Where?
Too little hair to cover it. You know? But I tell you something, though.
Y'all, what if I told you that one of the most groundbreaking, culture-shifting comedy shows of all time was secretly drowning in scandal? Like, behind all the laughs and iconic sketches, there was a messy swirl of ego wars, silent firings, twisted network games, and tea so hot it could burn through your TV screen. In Living Color wasn't just a show, it was a battlefield disguised as a comedy, and no one walked out of it clean. It was chaos in the form of entertainment, and at the center of it, the mastermind himself, Keenan Ivory Wayans. Now let's rewind. The year is 1990. TV is playing it safe. Nobody's taking real risks. That's when Keenan Ivory Wayans breaks through with something nobody saw coming, in Living Color. It wasn't just funny, it was raw, real, and way ahead of its time. The sketches poked at race, class, gender, and politics like it was child's play. It was like Saturday Night Live, but actually fearless. And it hit hard. But Fox executives, not so much. See, when Keenan first pitched the show,
appreciate your attitude. You know, I guess you're stepping to me, man. Why you
the network told him to be himself. Big mistake. Because Keenan's idea of being himself meant flipping the script on the entire industry. They let him shoot the pilot, but when it came time to actually air it, suddenly they panicked like someone had set the studio on fire. Executives pulled him into meetings. They were sweating bullets. They told him it was funny, undeniably brilliant, but that they weren't sure the world was ready. They literally hired research teams to analyze how the jokes made people feel. Not because it was funny or it would sell, but just because it would shake things up too much. And yeah, it definitely did.
So Barry let us shoot it, but then it came time to air it. And that's when everybody got nervous. Like everybody. And Peter Chernin was head of network, sat me down, and he said, "We're really nervous about airing this." He goes, "Undoubtedly, it is great and funny." He goes, "But we just don't think we can air this."
Even after all the nervous back and forth, it still took an entire year before that first episode saw the light of day. A year. Just because the network didn't know what to do with something that real. But when it finally aired, it was a cultural explosion. Suddenly, everyone was quoting the sketches, dancing like the Fly Girls, and tuning in every single week. But here's the thing. Even though the show was killing it on screen, off-screen was a different story. The pressure was intense. People were clawing for airtime. Writers were locked in silent wars. Performers were out to prove they were the funniest, the boldest, the most original. And while the show was breaking boundaries, the people behind it were cracking under the weight. Everyone wanted a piece of the spotlight, but there were only so many seats at the table. Keenan had created a masterpiece, no doubt, but holding it all together, that was another story. The network didn't trust him. The cast started to crumble, and the industry sharks could smell blood in the water. What started as a creative revolution was quickly turning into a silent war zone, where one misstep could cost you everything.
Drop me uniform wherever I want. I work 15 jobs. I don't have time for your foolishness. When I come home, I'm tired.
Now let's talk about what was really going on when the cameras stopped rolling. Because while In Living Color was killing it in the ratings, the cast and crew were slowly unraveling behind the scenes. We're not talking about tiny disagreements or diva moments. We're talking full-blown ego clashes, jealousy, and toxic competition that left people exhausted, isolated, and in some cases, completely destroyed. On paper, it looked like a comedy dream team, but in reality, it was a war zone. You'd think with all the laughs and high-energy performances that the set would be a fun, lighthearted place. But according to the cast themselves, that couldn't be further from the truth. Tommy Davidson, one of the brightest stars on the show, described the experience as straight-up competitive chaos. Performers were fighting for airtime. Writers were scrambling to get their material featured. It wasn't about teamwork. It was survival of the funniest. And let's be real, the stakes were sky high. Everyone knew this show was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
My woman left me, man. Because she got tired of washing them pillow covers, man.
So if you wanted to stay, you had to earn it every single week. Except not everyone had to compete.
And people would sit me down and say, "Hey, don't you do that, don't you do that, don't you do that." And it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just one of them things where there was a lot of opportunities available to me, and I was in an emotional space where I was dependent on those things to help me deal with the present reality.
Keenan was the creator, the head writer, and one of the lead stars. It was his show, his vision, his rules. And if you weren't on board, you were out. Simple as that.
Yeah, fall down, bust my skull open, have my blood and brains ooze out on the carpet so you can get a couple of cheap laughs, huh?
For Tommy Davidson, the pressure became unbearable. People warned him to slow down, to take care of himself, to be careful with the lifestyle that came with fame. But he didn't listen, or maybe he just couldn't. He later admitted that he turned to substance use to cope with everything coming at him. The fame, the emotional stress, the loneliness, it hit him hard. And no matter
I'm running things.
Stick with me, baby. I'll have you farting through silk.
how many people tried to pull him out of it, it just wasn't enough. And the wild part, everyone saw it coming. Except him. Even Keenan tried to step in, tried to help. But sometimes, when the spotlight's too bright, you don't notice the shadows creeping in behind you. Still, no one could deny Tommy's talent. Keenan himself called him the Energizer Bunny, a performer with endless energy, voices, musical skill, and comedic timing that couldn't be taught. But behind that high-energy persona was someone struggling to hold it together. Now let's get into the part where the personal and professional started to...
Oh, Lord. I thought I flushed my toilet. I'm the one who saved you from the IRS.
to collide hard, because what was going on behind closed doors on In Living Color wasn't just about jokes or scripts anymore. It was getting messy, personal, and at times downright shady. You had relationships forming, friendships breaking, and secrets that nobody wanted out in the open. Let's start with Kim Coles. Yeah, the one with that bubbly energy who lit up the screen every time she showed up. Well, she was only on In Living Color for one season before she vanished. Like, literally gone with zero warning. Viewers were confused. 1 week she was on fire, and the next, ghosted. No goodbye episode. No explanation. Kim herself later opened up about how cold it all went down. She said she didn't even hear it from Keenan. Her agent called her and told her not to come to work on Monday. No warning, no conversation, no closure. Can you imagine being on the hottest show on television and suddenly just erased? That's the kind of betrayal that cuts deep. To make things even messier, Kim believed her firing wasn't just because of their rumored romance gone wrong.
And I didn't know he was feeling it too, like it was a strong competitive experience. I went to Living Single and it was a cooperative. And so it was very different.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
And better.
And better for me.
She suspected it had to do with another Wyans, Kim Wyans, Keenan's sister. Kim Coles said she felt like she wasn't allowed to shine.
Say what? I'd like a new fork. Your fork is dirty. Oh, baby, that ain't nothing but a little bit of dried up cabbage.
Because Kim Wyans had to have the spotlight. And honestly, the timing and silence around her exit, it was giving real family-first energy, but it didn't stop there. You know who else was caught up in the behind-the-scenes whisper storm? Jennifer Lopez. Back then, she was just another fly girl, one of the talented dancers who brought the fire to the show's choreography. But sis was turning heads left and right, and the rumors? Oh, they caught on fast. People started saying the only reason J-Lo stayed on the show so long was because she had a thing going with Keenan too. Of course, there's never been any concrete evidence, and neither Keenan nor J-Lo ever confirmed it. But the way that rumor refused to die, it says a lot.
Now, I really like little Spike Lee's courage in making this film. I especially like the way he mixed the racial tension with the violence.
Especially when fellow cast member Jamie Foxx may or may not have added fuel to that fire with his own offhand comments.
For the show, whatever, let's go get something to eat, whatever. And I come back home on a landline, I get the phone call. And my agent says, yo, you about to be on The Living Color. Right then I said, what? Hung up, I told the girl, look, you got a place to stay. You stay with me. And then I changed where I was going to eat. I was going to go to Kentucky Fried Chicken because I didn't have the money, but I said, oh, I'm about to get a check. Let's go to Intermezzo.
And speaking of Jamie Foxx, let's talk about his reputation on set. You'd think the always smiling, smooth-talking star was everyone's bestie. But according to Tommy Davidson, not even close. In his memoir, Tommy said Jamie was competitive, sharp-tongued, and straight-up mean behind the scenes. Not just teasing, but cruel, especially toward Tommy himself. Apparently, Jamie figured out that mocking Tommy earned him points with Keenan, and he ran with it. The jokes weren't just part of the script. They were personal. They hurt, and no one stepped in to stop it. Keenan, he let it happen, even pushed it. He thought it made the scenes funnier, but for Tommy, it was torture. You can feel it in his words, like he's still carrying some of that pain. So by now, the show was a certified cultural phenomenon. The sketches were legendary, the cast was buzzing, and Keenan Ivory Wayans had built one of the most iconic platforms in television history. But just when everything seemed unstoppable, the network decided to get nervous. Like, real nervous. The same executives who told Keenan to go wild in the beginning, yeah, suddenly they weren't so comfortable with that anymore, because In Living Color wasn't just poking fun, it was holding up a mirror to society. And some of the things it was reflecting, the higher-ups didn't want to see it, So what did they do? Oh, just classic corporate sabotage. First, they started censoring sketches. One week, a joke would air just fine. The next week, that same exact joke would be labeled too far. Keenan described it like dancing blindfolded. He never knew where the line was because the line kept moving. He wasn't being reckless. He literally asked them to define the limits. But they wouldn't. Instead, they just kept shifting the goalpost. One week you were a genius, the next week you were offensive. It was gaslighting, corporate style, and it got worse. And Keenan, he said it felt like being interrogated by the CIA. These weren't your regular TV executives. They were stiff, silent, calculating. They weren't interested in creativity. They were interested in control. But the worst blow came not from censorship, but from betrayal. Out of nowhere, Fox started airing reruns, and not just on off nights, while brand new episodes were still airing, without telling Keenan, without consulting him, without giving him any warning. And remember, this wasn't just about TV scheduling, this was about ownership. Those older episodes were supposed to revert to Keenan's control the next year, which meant big money and syndication. So what did Fox do? They jumped the gun and reran the show before he could get his rights back. It was slick, it was strategic, and it was shady as hell. To make matters worse, the rerun stunt wasn't just a financial blow. It was a strategic move by Fox to use In Living Color's success to boost their other shows. They began slotting reruns right before or after new pilots to borrow the show's massive audience. Basically, they used Keenan's creation as a launchpad while stripping him of control over it. It wasn't just betrayal, it was exploitation. Keenan was blindsided, the reruns devalued the entire show, and he couldn't stop it. All those years of building something revolutionary, the network was using it to launch other shows, steal its audience, and drain its worth right before his eyes. He described the moment like a punch in the gut. One day, he walked into a meeting, and they told him, straight up, no warning, that reruns were dropping Monday morning. The same reruns he was supposed to own next year, the reruns that were his. He couldn't believe it. He kept saying, you're joking, but they weren't. They'd already made the call, and the damage was done. That was the moment the magic cracked. The trust was gone. The passion turned to pain. And the creator of the most iconic sketch comedy show in history, he walked away. Because how do you keep building something when the people above you are working against you? And now let's talk about what happens when the heart of a show finally walks away. After all the battles, creative, emotional, and corporate, Keenan Ivory Wayans had finally had enough. The censorship, the reruns, the shady tactics, the constant undermining from executives who once begged him to be himself. It was all too much. This wasn't the show he created anymore. This wasn't his vision. So he did the one thing nobody saw coming. He left. Midway through season 4, Keenan stepped away from In Living Color, the very show he birthed, nurtured, and defended with everything he had. And when he left, the entire energy shifted, like instantly. Without Keenan at the helm, things spiraled quickly. The creative edge dulled. The storylines lost bite. The sketches no longer had that spark that made them feel electric. You could feel the difference. It was like watching a band keep playing after the lead singer walks off stage. It's just not the same. The final season limped to the finish line, but the damage had already been done. Fans started tuning out, the buzz faded, and by 1994, Fox quietly pulled the plug. No dramatic finale, no massive send-off, just silence. The show that changed the game ended with barely a whisper, but the legacy? Oh, honey, that never died. In Living Color launched a generation of legends. Jim Carrey, Jamie Foxx, Jennifer Lopez, the Wayans family empire, all of them exploded after the show ended, and you can trace their entire success back to that little sketch comedy that Fox once tried to water down. And as for the cast, some soared, some struggled, and some had to fight their way back from being overshadowed or pushed out. Tommy Davidson eventually opened up about his trauma in a memoir.
You never talk about mom, and she had passed away about 10 years ago. So I put some thought into that, and, I wasn't really that cool on really talking about my family because I was so different all my life. At least it seemed to me, a black dude having a white family wasn't the most popular thing in Washington, D.C. In the 70s. And
Kim Coles moved on to living single and found her own spotlight. Jamie Foxx won an Oscar. Jim Carrey became a global comedy icon. And J.Lo, she literally became a one-woman brand. And Keenan, he kept creating. Movies like Scary Movie and White Chicks were born from the same bold, satirical voice that made In Living Color a revolution. But the sting of what happened with the show, you can still feel it in his interviews. He built a cultural empire and watched it get taken from him. The truth is, In Living Color didn't just end. It was dismantled, undermined, quietly erased by people who didn't understand its value until it was too late. But the fans never forgot. The culture never forgot. And history? Yeah, it definitely didn't forget. Because In Living Color wasn't just ahead of its time. It defined its time. And no matter how messy it got behind the scenes, one thing is clear. They really tried to kill a legacy, but baby, legends don't die.